Cutting you short, Dan. Our next session is Melinda Varfi on community and sustainability. She's the co-founder of Impact Hub Budapest. She works towards a sustainable society, like we talked about. She believes in the power of communities and has been doing this for quite some time, working towards this at least 8 years, as far as I'm informed. And Melinda, I'm really excited actually to listen in on your session and hear what you have to say, what you know, what you've learned from this experience, and where you see it going forward from here as well. So if you're ready, please go ahead and take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. Can you hear me properly?
Definitely, perfectly.
Thank you. Just calling in from rural Hungarian countryside. So the reason why I keep checking about my technical setup is that's the reason. And the reason why I'm also bringing this up is because for me, the last couple of months have been definitely pushing even more towards community and communal living in the times of uncertainty and challenges. And this is also the topic closest to my heart, and this is why I have chosen to speak about this at this beautiful event where people are connecting with their own hearts and other people's hearts as well. As you just introduced me, I have 8 years ago I came back from Sweden after studies in sustainability and leadership, and I have been looking for my own community back to my own country. And at that time, sustainability was still very much in the beginning of its own, let's say, field. So when you wanted to meet like-minded people, it was not the easiest just to come across them. And one such place for connecting have been the Impact Hubs network, and the Impact Hubs is a physical community-based co-working space. And I thought, okay, I'm sure Budapest also must have such a space where I can just walk in, being welcomed by someone who knows the community and can put me in touch with people that might be interested in similar areas or similar projects that I'm working on. But it turned out that the Budapest didn't have at that time yet an Impact Hub, and it's not just like that. You push a button and then all of a sudden there's going to be a co-working space open up. And my story started with looking for like-minded people that are interested in creating such a home for people that want to see change on both on a social and on an ecological level as well. And I'm also not afraid to do things for it. So the Impact Hub started from this in the desire to have a place for connecting with people and collaborating together. And since then, this idea of working in community and being with community and solving problems together, or establishing new ideas and new projects together is very much how I'm living my day-to-day life as a freelance facilitator and host of meaningful conversations. And interestingly, as I mentioned, the topic was arising from sustainability for me. And this is also one of the questions that I'm holding dearly in this moment as well, that what does the sustainability challenge ask from us, and how can we really overcome the challenges that are present in our lives nowadays, such as, let's not go too far, the last couple of months have been really defining for most of the people in this world around the coronavirus, and what helped people to overcome the uncertain times, what helped people to cope with fear, with not knowing what's going to be, what the next month is bringing. How am I going to survive being in lockdown, or how am I going to survive not seeing my family for a couple of months because I'm stuck in another country. And for me, the solution, or maybe it's not even the solution, it's just the way of coping. The key to resilience is community. And for a long time, I have been practicing this, I say, hosting meaningful conversations. So hosting conversations with people that you put a question or a topic in the middle, and then just sitting together with active listening, and also discerning of what needs to be said in that circle, especially if the circle is pretty big. And then finding together some of the answers and some of the next steps of how to go about the challenge, or just really an open question that not only one person is sitting with, but multiple people. From this hosting meaningful conversations, for a while I have been feeling that the magic is just so amazing when you see people opening up to each other, and feeling that they are being heard, feeling that finally there's someone who takes his or her opinion into consideration, that there's really a weight in the end of the discussion with his or her own opinion. And then I felt like, okay, this could be the solution for everyone, because what I have seen is that when people cannot be empathical with each other, when they cannot feel that there's another person on the other side of the table, let's just say, it could be the neighbor, it could even be someone on the other side of the country, or just the other side of the globe as well. When you can't feel the empathy with another person, then it's unlikely that you will be able to find the common voice or the common path how to solve something that is maybe very challenging for you, less challenging for the other person, or maybe you have completely opposite opinion about the same topic. That's how I started to go deeper and deeper into the art of hosting methodology, and not even a methodology. I would say it's a way of being and a way of holding these conversations. And for a while, I really felt like the challenge is that people are so separated from each other that that when they cannot connect with one another, then it's not going to be possible to work for the same goal, for the same vision, such as the sustainability challenge, for example, which is it's just growing in our world day by day, but still the political leaders are still pretending that we can solve it somehow with the use of technology, or I don't know, different type of measures. But let's be also very honest, I think, and discerning in that way, that it didn't really happen in the last decades, and it doesn't seem too likely that the political power is going to shift in such a way that it's going to put this on the first point of the next upcoming years, and say, okay, we really need to stop all the greenhouse gas emissions, and then everyone should change to electrical cars, and we should stop the coal power plant stations. It doesn't seem that this is going to be the way forward. So what I have discovered in all these conversations with different individuals and organizations seeking common solutions, or just seeking a common understanding of just the challenge that is lying in front of us, is that people are just feeling very challenged, even to connect with themselves. And if you cannot connect with one yourself, then it's very challenging to connect with someone else and feel empathy for that. So I even stepped one more step backwards, and seeing that it's really important to think small, really, and in a small unit of a community, whether it's a family, whether it's a friend circle, whether it's a professional circle. First, allow people to connect with themselves, to feel safe enough to be hosted in their own processes, and with all the fears, anxieties, and also the happiness and the joy. And then we can go the next step, which is connecting with one another. And then we can go into the next step, which is co-creating with one another, which is similar to the fourfold path in the art of hosting philosophy. I see that there's some questions from Reshma. Or Reshma, I'm wondering, will you read that up? And is this a good time maybe to talk about it? Okay, so the question I see is that the economic model is based entirely on profitability. How does sustainability fit into that? Only through legal norms and limits, or something more? Good question. So, as much as I'm not an economist, I can do say that the economic model that we are living is still very much connected to capitalism, but actually we are already living the post-capitalism. I think that there are tries, and there are in different directions from, for example, Charles Eisenstein has been proposing for years the gift economy, which is entirely taking away the price tag of services and goods, and really looking at, okay, what is my gift, what is your gift, how can we gift each other without also the necessary expectation that I need to get back something from you. Because if we think about, again, as a community unit, then I need to trust that whatever I'm offering and whatever is my need is going to come back from the community. And I don't need to have the expectation that if I'm gifting B something, that I need to get something back from B as a return for the goods. That used to be the, I think in the much more older times when there has been a goods-based commercial, but that still was kind of depending on a price tag. So usually we say, you know, profit and people and planet is usually what is the model of the capitalism, and it needs to be completely changed around, starting with planet, people, and maybe profit on the last one. But definitely the planet and the well-being of the planet needs to be in our economic model much more than it's currently available. The legal norms and limits, I think it's really important. I mean, if we want to change sustainability into much more into how to say, a stronger way of living our day-to-day lives, we need to have certain regulations. I can only talk from the European Union perspective, which has been trying hard in the last years, to have a good picture about what is possible and how to introduce some of these regulations in the life of the EU member states. It's not so easy because it's trying to harmonize quite a high number of states' individual interests, and plus the lobbying force is quite strong. But one thing that I really like, and this is just a small example, that with the flights and the taxing of flying, there is a plan now that they really want to tax the short-term flights within, for example, Europe, much higher than the longer transatlantic flights, because it just became so cheap and so affordable that it's really not, it's not true to its own value, and it's also not encouraging people to think twice about whether it's worthwhile to take a train, which is obviously much less CO2 emission, or whether it's just hop on a flight to Berlin from Budapest, let's say, for a weekend and then come back without thinking much about what is my contribution to the health system of the planet. So this is just an answer to the first question. I see a second question. Our youth want to know, how can you help others when you feel uncertain about yourself inside? That's a big question. First of all, I think it's really important just to acknowledge the uncertainty. If you don't acknowledge, if you don't give it space, then it's gonna turn into an anxiety, and it's gonna turn into very easily, it can paralyze our movements, our ways of being. And what we want is really to have as much as a free inner state for, which is also available for action and also for retreat when it's needed, as possible. So acknowledging that there is uncertainty is really important. And I think the current younger generation has been born into uncertainty. There's really zero certain future scenarios, so to say, that can really stand in front of you. I wish I can still say that this is me, but I think my generation already, when I was born at this time, there has been still very strong future scenarios that my parents have lived, and that's what we have been growing into.
It's a very profound question in those terms, because we are constantly surrounded by uncertainty. And I think one of the biggest examples would be the time we're living in right now, because this by itself was something that we were never prepared for. Nobody was ever prepared for. Nobody ever saw this coming. And yeah, like people, the younger community, the youth are always constantly in a stage of, will we get a job? Will we do this? Will we be able to do that? You know, everything is very uncertain for them. So I think this was a very important question. We do have another question. We have a few more questions, actually. So another one is that, do you feel that the youth of today are more conscious about the importance of community living? Do you see a difference between the two? If so, why do you think so? What is your thought on that?
I do want to salute to the youth of today, because I think I see that there's a really increasing level of consciousness in many ways, and I do believe that community is also getting more and more in the heart of all this increased level of consciousness. The question for me is really, you know, like when shit hits the fan, then who can you count on? And of course, you know, we grow up relying on our family and family members, but as we are growing up and we are leaving the family unit, because that's the normal way of any human being, then who do you rely on? You rely on your friends, you rely on the community that you belong to. And that's when you know that when you are in need, when you need help, that's the person that you can call on, and then you can say, hey, you know, I have a challenge. I need your help right now. And it's and with the challenges that are coming in, I think it's just going to be more and more important, is that yeah, just when I'm thinking about like how we are living in the city, you know, like super isolated in the little blocks of flats, and not even knowing who is the neighbor, not even knowing who's living above us. It's just increasingly difficult to really be more in touch. And it's been super nice to see now that during the Corona times, for example, in Hungary, there is a small application which is about connect with your neighbors, and it's all about it. It's not about it's not money based. The whole idea is that what is it that you have extra, what is it that you have need in, and then allow people to connect based in their own neighborhood. It's an application you can download on your phone or on web, and it's great.
I like the example that you just gave about the app, because I noticed during the pandemic, because you were all in a lockdown state, and every time you'd go out, you know, just for like a grocery shopping or something like that, during the complete lockdown, I noticed that strangers seem to smile more than before, because like before you meet someone on the road, nobody really smiles as much or even notices each other. But because we were all, you know, locked up and in between those four walls, every chance that we got to go out for those minute details, I felt like all the strangers and everybody you meet just seem to smile, or, you know, it's a very small thing, but it still happened. We also have another question, and I think this is from YouTube. So it says, I'm 18 now and my goals are different from what my parents want for me. So should I choose what my parents tell me to do or go for my goals? I don't want to regret in the future for not standing up for myself. Wow.
Well, I sort of think that the person who has written this question is already has the answer. So I find it challenging to like, I don't want to be here in the role of expert, but I think what is always the most important thing is connect with your own heart and connect with your own inner self. Everyone has their own intuitive self, and as much as, yes, we are socialized and we are growing up in families where there is certain values that we are living by, but at the end of our life, we are living our own life. We are not living our parents' life. We are not living our parents' dream about our own lives. So I think the most important is that as much as you can, just connect with your own inner self, and you have the answer inside you. And that probably means that if you have a different dream, then be bold and courageous and dare to live that. It's not so easy with the parents, but I think it's probably not so easy in any cultures. Of course, there's certain cultures that are much more.
I think when you're younger, it's much more difficult for you to really understand that you can, you know, listen to your heart and move forward with whatever goal you have in mind. There's another very interesting question. This is the one that I like. How can developing countries implement sustainability goals early on, such that they implement a framework that works in the longer term? So we're looking at developing countries implementing sustainable goals that last a very long term. Do you have any ideas, or what is your thought?
Well, that's a bit, again, it's a complex
Let's break it down to a smaller level. Think about something that like a starting point. It could be something very small and that is very accessible. It can be, let's look at it as the people in developing countries. What can they do? Something, you know, let's look at it in a smaller set.
Yeah. What I think is and then there's already some really beautiful examples that is really leading is, you know, like just to think about what is it that what people need most of, which is, for example, energy. So in developing countries, energy access and changing the traditional way of creating energy, such as, for example, coal power stations, and change them into renewables. That's like a huge leapfrog step forward. And that has been already happening in some of the African countries that has, instead of, like, I don't know, in Europe, you know, like we have been trying to, from coal power to go to nuclear power, and then maybe wind power, and now we can also go into solar power. But in some of these developing countries, they are leapfrogging, and they're not going this step by step, but just really, and now that the renewable energy, I mean, mostly the solar power panels, the production has become so cheap that it's really worthwhile now to start shifting in this direction in big scales. And the beauty of it also, that I have seen so many, like, for example, in Korea, in Japan, there's some really beautiful Buddhist communities that have changed, that decided, okay, we want to change our communities' energy access to renewables. And we created a little cooperative, which is not about like previously you would always thought that, oh, solar panels, it's super expensive, I won't be able to afford. But actually nowadays, the community can come together. The community can even ask from a community loan, and it doesn't need to be a bank, but there's all kinds of fundings available. And then they can create their own independent energy source. And then what is more, for example, the Koreans also saying is that it's amazing for them to see that and the energy that they are producing is not only enough for the whole community and the neighborhood, but there's extra there, and then you can sell this extra energy back to the bigger grid, and that is creating actually income. So it's not just you are having your own free energy, but there's even income generation through that. And then the whole idea of like investing in small bits, it's just going to be super financially sustainable in a couple of years. And that's really lovely to see that how is that taking up in small scale, and now there's more and more opportunities to do it in larger scales.
I think Yalde has a question. So now that Yalde is here, do you want to jump in this conversation?
Back. Yes. Thank you so far, Melinda. It's a really interesting topic. We have one question that says, tell us something big that you came to know about the world only after entering this field of work.
Oh yeah, I think that is a very fun question, because you're a freelancer, right? So
yeah,
you would have, I'm assuming you would have more to talk about in this question.
Well, I think that, so one thing that that I can just share is that after Sweden, I was working in India, and sorry?
Home country.
I was in Tamil Nadu in Chennai.
And, I am from Chennai.
Oh, lovely, Rasma. So then you know what I'm talking about. But you know, like,
go on ahead. I'm interested more.
I came from Europe. I joined a little NGO, started working, and at 1 p.m., all of a sudden, everything stops: the fan, the electricity, and I was like, oh, okay. And then my friend who was the NGO leader came in and was like, well, you know, it's the daily power cut. It's like it stops for 2 hours. Like, why? Well, because we don't have enough energy, and we need to serve first the industry, and the industrial segments need to be in the focus. So the society, the individual consumption is being decreased. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, anyway, I still have like 1 hour, 40 minutes battery on my laptop, so I'm just gonna work away. And then I was like, oh, but like there's no internet also. And then it was just such an idiotic moment for me when I recognized like, oh, internet also needs energy. It's not just like, you know, it's coming from the sky. And then, so it was just really interesting to notice how much we are depending really on energy. And when you grow up in a society just like me, when energy is always available, unless there's a storm and then the lightning hits your energy.
I think when you talk about storm and stuff, it reminds me of my own experience when we had a huge, we had a flood in Chennai a couple of years back, and there was a complete blackout for about two days. I mean, about a week we had an issue, and for 2 days it was a complete blackout. So, and I remember back home, it was just me and my brother, and we really had to put in all our resources and find a way to exist without electricity, without a lot of things. And it was almost on your feet. And the thing that I noticed then was that we were both youngsters who were doing this, but the people who seemed more lost were the people who are older than us, who are used to this kind of comfort, and they were not able to think on their feet on how to, balance this thing between living with such resources and living without those resources. Yeah. I actually wanted to know something else also before we move on to the next, audience question. You did mention, I think, when you told us about you, that you're a Warrior for Human Spirit student in Meg Wheatley's program. Can you tell us more about that? What is the program about? What does Warrior for Human Spirit student mean?
Thank you. Sure, happy to. So the Warrior for Human Spirits is connected to the Shambhala Buddhism lineage, but it's not fully Shambhala lineage. And Meg Wheatley, who has been a system thinker and sustainability expert for decades, and also writing about new ways of leadership that is needed in the world to overcome the sustainability challenges. She has been having an extensive spiritual practice for decades, and then came to terms that in order to really face the challenges that are coming, especially the sustainability challenges that are coming, but it's not just sustainability. In all, our society is in a collapse moment, whether we want to face it or not. And in order to be like talking about this inner uncertainty and the anxiety that often we are facing when we think about that everything that we know might collapse, and we don't know actually how is that gonna look like after that. You need a very strong spiritual practice, because if you have a strong spiritual practice, if you have the regularity in your life, the daily meditation, the contemplation, and allowing that you're not responding from reactions, but really going and working with what is alive in you, and then allow the discernment to happen before you decide to act. That is key to our resiliency in these times. And I mean, now this is just a very, very bare.
No, but I think I understand what you're saying, because during the pandemic, during the lockdown, not the pandemic because it's still on. During the lockdown, you kind of notice the importance of routine, especially when you're not going to be going somewhere, like, going to work or going to school or something. You start noticing the importance of having a routine, because otherwise you're just lying on your bed and you're like, oh, I don't have to go anywhere, so why not just stay in bed? So I think I understand it, but the routine needs to be, like you said, into other areas also, like you meditate daily and you really try to bring yourself and try to understand your own values and things like that. That is interesting. Another thing that I would like to know is actually about Impact Hub. You co-founded Impact Hub. Do you want to tell us more about what Impact Hub is about, or what you do? Or...
Sure. So yeah, as I said, Impact Hub is a place where it's a place for, so let's say it's a home for people who want to work in community, in a co-working space. And co-working has become really trendy and very fashionable in the last 10 years, let's say. But I think the biggest difference from Impact Hub to another co-working space is that it's really based on community. So people know each other, people know, oh, Resma, this is the direction, this is the field that you are working. Oh, Melinda, this is the direction that you are working. Oh, I heard about your project. Oh, look, there's a new member joining the community. Let me just introduce you two to each other, you three, and why don't you just set up yourself if you want to converse more, and then see if there's any common points. So the idea is really that the members of the community. I have been to many co-working spaces where people don't even know who is sitting next door in the or next table, because they're so separated with each other, because they just look at the co-working as a like as a restaurant, and you take a ticket, you sit down, and that's it. You put in your headphones, and there you go. But you don't connect with the people who you are sharing the physical space. And I think that's a really, really important thing, is that we want people to connect with each other, and then to find collaborations within the community. And then Impact Hub as an organization, both as a local and as a global organization, is actually also working on like, okay, so I know my members, I know my community. How can I support them? How can I look for bigger, for example, institutionalized partnerships? So if the city of Budapest is coming out with a new, I don't know, funding opportunity, then can I, as an Impact Hub, represent, 10 of my members and say, oh, look, you are looking for, a smart city project. Here in my community, there's 10 people who would be awesome in working along these lines. Let me bring you together, and maybe there's a partnership opportunity. So there's really a lot of like, how can we also represent our members on a higher level, on a global level as well, and what are the partnerships that we can also allow for them to enjoy through that.
I think based on everything you've told us now, I really want to understand your take about how technology is helping community building, because you mentioned mentioned previously that they had to create an app in Hungary, to know your neighbors and things like that. Because sometimes if I feel like there are lots of these apps that you can, get on to know, or find people to connect with for a certain situation. And then later, once you actually connect with the person, you realize the person was, right next to you all the time. So how do you think technology has affected community building, and how do you think, do you see a difference? Do you think it's better this way? Do you think it can be more profound?
I think there's just a healthy balance is needed with technology. So technology is great, and again, I'm just going to use the corona as the recent example because I think there was a perfect situation to notice. Okay, what happens when you are in lockdown? What happens when you're really, really isolated and you really can't even go out in the street and connect with someone? Like I moved down here to my late grandparents' house in a small little village. There's like, I don't have anyone here. I don't have any friends, no one here. So what I have done is that, but I didn't feel myself lonely because during the time I have connected with most of my friends globally, locally, on Skype, on Zoom, on whatever platforms. And I felt like, okay, we are just having a virtual conversation, a virtual coffee, a virtual cocktail sometimes, and just having a really heart-to-heart conversation. But I think, so it's beautiful and it's enabling us really to connect in ways that it wasn't available 30 years ago. But I think that it needs to be balanced. So I also feel that you can hear about people who are completely get lost in the virtual world, who can really get sucked into different identities and not accepting everything that is, for example, coming from a certain particular website or source of information, and not even asking critically, okay, is this really the right way? What is my opinion about it? But just accepting everything without limitations. So I think it just needs to be balanced. But I think technology is really, really key. And this is one of our advantages of how can we connect with each other, especially when, I just want to bring it also because I'm standing very strongly for the, for human rights and how certain countries, such as my country, also is misusing the power. The political power is misusing it, and but I also feel like there's a great opportunity to connect with like-minded people, to self-organize with like-minded people, and just say, okay, political power is one thing, but I can still live the life that I believe in and which is integral to my values, with the help of connecting with people through technology that I might not have known about before that. And I think all in all, we just really need to be very careful about how do we use internet and what does freedom of internet means. And I just want to maybe just
like sum it up. I would say it's more about being authentic and understanding your values, but at the same time finding, a balance and being responsible of how you use certain things.
Yes. And don't get lost in the virtual world. I mean, there's still an amazing world just outside of your door.
Yes, of course.
I think and we need to interact with that. We cannot just focus on the virtual world. I just wanted to close with the importance of internet and also the freedom of internet with saying that I'm hosting a citizens assembly in Hungary, which is a democratic, deliberative democracy way of hearing different people's opinion. When you are, it's based on the old Greek model, when you are literally pulling people's name from a big bag and then just say, okay, who's going to be representing society for this conversation without any idea, where is the person coming from, what are the views. And so there's going to be, in October, there's going to be a worldwide citizens assembly on the topic of the freedom of internet. And I just want to make this known for people because you might get an invitation from your own country.
All right.
It's going to be from Rwanda to France to Malaysia. And I think it's really important to have these conversations. Okay, what does it mean to have freedom of speech on the internet, and what does it mean if someone is really trying to control that, because there is also a threat that it's going to be controlled.
We will keep an eye out for that, but unfortunately we're almost done. If you can tell us very quickly what you'd like to tell the young audience to inspire them, or very quickly, perhaps a few things, a few words, a short phrase before we end the session.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Excuse me. Let me just find that question again. We just wanted to know what you'd like to tell our young audience, to inspire them. If you have a few words, a few phrases, or something like that.
I think for me, really, again, just going to come back to the main message. Don't live in isolation. Don't stay in your own world just because that has been said to you that that's more safe. Actually, no, it's not. It's not more safe. It is much more safe if you are allowing your heart to be open and vulnerable towards each other, to be seen, even with your challenges. And then you can rely on the community that is really your own community. That's the way forward. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Melinda. Thank you. Yade, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm here. Melinda, was really interesting. I mean, for me, it's an important subject, and I guess for a lot of the people out there. And I think if you're interested in these things, or you're thinking about working in this direction at some point, you should definitely reach out to Melinda. That would be great. At least I think so. And
thank you so much for being here, Melinda. We have to move on now because it's getting a little late.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.